So we got all our friends together for the award ceremony, and then we have alarms around our vineyards, and all the alarms just went off. I thought, what's going on here? And I turned them on, and it was just like a cyclone going through, the cameras and hail, and then when it passed, it was just like snow. And I had a neighbour come over, and I said, can you go and have a look at the farm? And he said, oh, it's not good. So I opened another bottle of wine.
Our grower guest today is Ashley Ratcliffe. Ash is a passionate advocate for the Riverland region and is doing fantastic things with the Mediterranean varieties he grows. Varieties like Vermentino, Fiano, Arinto and Nero d'Avola are all part of his Ricca Terra wine label. Ash has an amazing positive attitude and is incredibly active on socials. You can't miss him out there. So if you are one of those few people not following him, we suggest you give him a look. You can find all the details on Ricca Terra in our show notes on the website. So check it out at the Wine Grape Council South Australia website.
Welcome to Healthy Minds, Healthy Vines, the wellbeing podcast for growers, proudly brought to you by the Wine Grape Council of South Australia, sponsored by PIRSA, hosted by
journalist and award-winning mental health podcaster Callum McPherson,
and columnist for The Australian and the World of Fine Wine and Australia's leading wine writer when sold by the kilo, Nick Ryan. Let's crush this.
Ash, what was your vision when you bought your first vineyard?
It was a few years ago now.
A few years ago, about 20
Your vision was better than
20
it is now.
It's actually was. I have a bit of a weak moment with my wife. Whenever we have a child and she's distracted, you go and buy a vineyard. So I've been threatened to be divorced a few times, but she's happy now.
World's best birth control.
I think, like, I grew up I come from the Barossa, still do, and I had just finished working for a large vineyard development company. We had our own wine brand called Birchwood. Got a job with Yalumba, and there was a conflict of interest to have your own brand. And they said, well, can I have a vineyard? And they said, yeah, you can buy a vineyard and you can supply the fruit back to us. And couldn't afford anything in the Barossa. And it had a bit to do with the inland areas, especially Riverland. I thought, well, let's have a crack up there. So I bought 20 acres back in 2003, and today I think we just got over 200 acres up there. So there was no real vision. It was just really, I wanted to have a vineyard, and that was the most affordable place to buy it for somebody in their in their mid-30s.
Why that vineyard though? What was it about that vineyard that caught your eye?
There was a couple of things. One, we always, in our early days, we looked at properties where we could actually unbundle parts of the property that didn't have value to growing, but we could actually reduce our financial sort of exposure. So this property had a house on it that was subdividable. So we took the house off of it and took a $400,000 loan and dropped it down to about 160 in a few months. So in our early days, our strategies of buying vineyards were what assets could we actually debundle and flog off, because one of the things that's kept us, I think, quite allowed us to expand and kept us mentally sort of sound as well is we don't have a high gearing, because we've always looked at, one of the things in agriculture and life, if you get highly geared and you start hitting a storm, you're going into the storm with all your hatches open, which can be a bit dangerous.
Yep.
And Ricca Terra has really been getting noticed in the past few years, been listed in the top 10 upcoming wineries for Australia and a few other things. But what's it taken to get to that point? Because you've been working at it for a couple of decades now.
It has been looking for up to about 2016. I was with Yalumba. So there was a lot of weekend work, there was a lot of sacrifices when my mates were going into the pub or going to play football. I'd be driving off and my young son would be waving goodbye at the window as I'd go away for the whole weekend. So, in those early days, missed out a lot of time with the kids and a young family. Lucky I had a great wife who's not only a business partner, but, could understand where we were going and great support. But also I think it's always about dreaming. I had a dream, and I talk to myself quite a bit. I think that might keep me, I don't know if that's being crazy or keeps you sane. I always get the right answer too, that I want to hear. But the key thing was always about trying to think about, I realised we bought our first vineyard at the end of the last boom, and then we had this crash. And it was either get bigger or get out. And the upside was that, as people were trying to get out of the wine industry, I was buying these vineyards at, I was always embarrassed the pricing that I was buying some of these vineyards for. So that gave us income, but I kept our gearing down because, we weren't spending much money on it. And then got to a point where we were able to employ people like vineyard managers and that. So I guess it's just, passion, vision, You have to have a certain amount of be brave, but also I think for me it's about now is I see this region that I farm in, which I don't live in, as having a great opportunity for the wine industry into the future.
Have you ever thought about giving it away when it got tough?
No. I really
Lifer.
Well, I had a pinch myself moment the other day, and it might sound a bit crazy that I had the opportunity I walked into Bunnings and bought a broom and did this, and I'm thinking, well, I run this business, but I can do this and it feels damn good. So I guess the little things actually are good things when we've got to a point in our business where I can sort of do what I want, when I want and how I want. And it's really, it's a good feeling.
And what's it been like to have that dream to work on, to wake up every day and have a goal like that and something that's your own that you can craft and shape, and at the end of the day, it's on you to make it work or not make it work. What's it like to live your life with that as your focus?
Well, I think it's a hell of a lot of satisfaction because we're generation one. We haven't come with, parents' money or any other people's money. It's my wife and myself, and we've got a great bank manager that we work with.
A little shout out to the bank manager here.
Shane Pudney for ANZ. He's a great guy, and we've been with him from day dot. And so I think sitting back now and looking at what we've achieved, which we think is good, but there's lots of people who've done a lot better than we have. I think is testament to the fact that we've just been keen and passionate and focused on trying to improve a region. Especially what's helped us, we were lucky. You talk about, the climate change issue. That's what drove us to put in all these different varieties, because we thought, well, A, there could be an opportunity in the market, but two, if we really start experiencing these problems, we don't want to be playing catch up. So hence why we thought, well, let's go and put all these different grape varieties in, and fingers crossed that the market goes that way, and then people were excited by it.
How have you measured your progress along the way? Like, how have you known that you're on the right track?
Oh, we can't keep up. At the moment, if you look at the wine industry, Shiraz and Cabernet in our area is if you haven't got a contract for it, it's likely to go on the ground. Our alternative varieties, we just can't keep up. We're planting more vineyards. We're pulling out those varieties. To me, that's the greatest gauge when I've got people calling me all the time saying, hey, look, we need some more fruit. And even now, if you look at through southern New South Wales, they're even looking for things like Shiraz and Cabernet and Chardonnay, because the problem they've got at the moment, they can't ripen the stuff because of this cool weather. So as a region, it's got so many benefits. But the problem is that we don't look at the positives this region has, which is it's got a good climate, it's dry generally, and it gets fruit ripe. And if it's not going into mass factories all the time, you make some pretty damn good fruit and wine out of it.
So what's special about winemaking in the Riverland?
Well, to me, it is the climate. I mean, the fact that, if you're in the Adelaide Hills or even when I leave Angaston some morning, it's as foggy as it can be. I just get down Accommodation Hill, I've got blue skies and no rain. So there's a lot of benefits. The other thing, we've got water. I mean, water's always been talked about how much of a challenge it is, but my view on water is if it's raining, water prices come down. If there's a drought, it goes up. And there's all these policies that go behind it, but at the moment you're buying water for $70 a megalitre. 4 years ago it was $900 a megalitre. So it has got reliable water, it's got good soils, it's got good climate. It's now starting to get a bit of an image in regards to that avant-garde sort of new wave, and I think that's all very positive for the region.
You've been a big part of that sort of rethinking of the Riverland and changing perceptions, but that's not always easy, being that sort of trailblazing, entity. So was there some resistance? Were people looking at you going, why aren't you just pumping out more Chardonnay and Shiraz and Cabernet off here and pouring the water onto it? Why are you playing around with these varieties no one can pronounce?
Well, it still happens today. I'm surprised there's not more people who are doing what we're doing, but I'm lucky. I did a video degree, but I did a master's in marketing. So I sort of try to understand buyer behaviour. What does the consumer want? And I still think up to now that, there's still not a grape grower in this country that handles fruit like we do. We've got select harvesters, we've got cool rooms, we've got refrigerated trucks, we've got, all sorts of bin sizes. So, when a winemaker comes into our vineyards, and they're not, I remember Sue Bell, a particular example, first time she walked into our vineyards, and it's all hand pruned, and she said, "This is not the Riverland." I said, "Well, actually, it is. It's just the way we're thinking about managing it." And of course, when the fruit turns up, we take fruit all the way up to Witches Falls, just outside the Gold Coast. That's the furthest we go. It's a 2-day truck trip. and the fruit comes out, and they say, "Gee, we're going to have to let this fruit warm up a bit." I mean, they're things that you're not expecting out of the Riverland. I don't know why more people aren't following, but to me, it's an exciting time in our business because when you've got 42 different grape varieties, it's like cooking with a full swag of herbs rather than just having a bit of basil, salt and pepper.
42 for now. Do you see a final number in your head? Or
no, we're putting in some Sangiovese and the new clones, because that's the other thing about it. Sometimes you've got to sit and wait. Sangiovese is notorious for throwing massive crops. But
big Triffid. Yeah,
so we've worked out, Mark Walpole, I picked his brain. I said, give me the 2 lowest yielding clones, which he's given us that. But then we've got some Pecorino going in, and hopefully Falangino in the years to come. So I think there'll always be something new going in.
You got 80% of your crop knocked out by a hailstorm end of last year. What was it like to cop that?
Oh, it was beautiful.
It was great. It was
best moment of my life. Look, it was tough. There's no question. It was something that was, I've only really broken down twice. Once was when my father died, and the second time was, after going up there and coming home. And I remember how just surreal and numb I felt, thinking to myself, I've got all this staff. I've got all these winemakers that are wanting fruit. And, I've lost about 400 tonnes of fruit. Which wasn't quite 80%, and our vineyards are spread out all over the place. Our strategy also was to sort of have our vineyards spread rather than having them all together. It was a prime example how that had paid off. Again, coming back to my wife, great support, a shoulder to cry on. But next morning, Monday morning, I thought, well, this is not going to get me anywhere being in a fetal position in the corner. I've actually got to come out, all guns blazing and be positive. And I got the team together and I said, right, because they're all worried, what's going to happen with their jobs. I said, well, we're all fine. And we're going to do this, and this, and we'll come out of it in a better position. So,
and the attitude was very much that the way to face up to it was we've all got to just work harder because that's what you could control. What power is there in taking that attitude on?
Well, not so much working harder. I think you had to, first thing, you just acknowledge that it was a gut-wrenching experience. And, if people felt sad and down about it, that's fine.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that. But there was a point where we're not, it was saying, okay, guys, what are we doing? What are the parts of the business that haven't been impacted? So our wine hadn't been impacted. So we had an opportunity to really use that event to drive sales. And it did. Sales went straight up because there was an emotional connection. People wanted to help out. We've got a trading business where we buy and sell fruit. And, we tripled the size of that business in the last, not even 12 months. And again, I look at it now, if it wasn't for that, we've got that business is so much stronger because of the hail event. We made this wine here, based on the fruit that we re-pruned, and it grew again, and we had the second crop and we made it into a wine. So again, it allowed us to get in front of probably some consumers out there in the marketplace that we wouldn't have been able to get to without that sort of story. So I think you just take those events on the chin, and as long as they don't kill your business. And that's the other thing, we talk about gearing. We've always said our business is structured financially that we can take one of these big bad years like that. You don't want them in succession, but you can get through one. Doesn't kill your business. It should make it stronger. So touch wood, we don't have another hail event this year.
But then to be able to have that experience and then know that you got through it the last time that it happened, and then it sort of feels like no matter what happens, we'll find a way to push through it and keep it going. But at the time, especially if it's the first time that it's ever happened, it's that feeling of, are we going to get through this? Because I don't have any evidence to support what we do at a time like this. But once you've done it before, it's I suppose, not easier, but you can see a clearer path forward. But when it's the first time, it's a bit tough.
Well, I think it wasn't. It's not the first time. We've had droughts to deal with, high water prices, low demand for fruit. The wine industry is like probably any industry in agriculture. I think if you lined them up over 3 or 4 decades, there's more downs than there is ups.
Yeah.
And I think, that's part of the lifestyle, is that you have to understand that it's not all, the stars rarely all align at once. And when they do, you make sure you enjoy it.
Yeah, you cash in because it's not, you've got to make the hay while the sun shines.
How does the community come together to support each other when they're having a particular tough time like that?
Did you say you were at the Alternative Varieties wine show when the news of the hailstorm came through?
It was all by Zoom. It was still in that lockdown period. So
okay, yep.
And I'd been chair or president of that wine show for a number of years. It's the first time we really couldn't get together. And I remember going through the awards and having a great, having a few drinks. We got all our friends together for the award ceremony, and then we have alarms around our vineyards, and all the alarms just went off. I thought, what's going on here? And I turned them on, and it was just like a cyclone going through, the cameras and hail, and then when it passed, it was just like snow. And I had a neighbour come over, and I said, can you go and have a look at the farm? And he said, it's not good. So I opened another bottle of wine.
So in terms of damage, I mean, what time of the year was it?
November, first weekend or second week in November.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's vine damage, but then there's also infrastructure damage. I mean,
no,
really,
just
just all vines shredded.
Yeah, I've been in a hail event where north of Mildura, probably 8 years ago, where we had to take out, I think it was 30 dead kangaroos. But we're talking about hailstones like this.
Right.
They just anything outside.
Lethal.
Anything outside was destroyed, but this was smaller hail, but just quite intense. So, it just shredded the vines and the fruit.
So do people in the community come out and try to help in some way when they see something like that? Especially see you on social media, you're quite active and showing the good as well as the bad, but what kind of a response do you get? Because obviously people can relate to the struggles that you go through. We
had a lot of support from close friends. We had a lot of support from, some of our neighbours. But unfortunately, that sort of stuff passes pretty quickly. It's very raw for a day, 2, 3, and then something else happens in the world, which seems to be, quite common these days. Yeah. You get distracted pretty quickly. And especially during COVID, I guess as well, there were so many other things that people were thinking about. I take my hat off. I found our local government representative, being Tim Whetstone, being quite good. He came out straight away and listened. He talked about the policies they had during the last hail event, which I said there were some flaws in that. And he listened and made changes. So, look, they were good.
Why do you think it's important to share the good stuff as well as the stuff that's a bit harder on social media? I notice you really post some good stuff on there, but not just the highlight reel, like the real stuff as well.
Well, when I was at Yalumba, I was a guinea pig at a course run by the Adelaide University. It was on, I guess you say, paradigm management. What's the new way to manage staff in the future? Because we're moving away from this industrial way of managing people. I'm the boss and you're down there and you do as you're told. And so it was really a bit of a, trying to work through new programs that we could adopt internally. At that time, I was managing the Oxford Landing Winery, which is a 40,000 tonne winery. And I came across a program called Appreciative Inquiry, which is very much about focusing only on the positives.
Yep.
And I fell in love with this process. I thought, we do spend so much time dwelling on what goes wrong in your day, but we never really worry about what goes right. So there was a few things at the winery that weren't working, and I got the winemaking team together and said, we're going to take this approach of focusing on positives only, and then we're going to try and break down this division between winemaking and cellar. And everybody got behind it. I didn't have any funding for it. Luckily, that Oxford Landing Winery was a bit remote from the main mothership at Anguston.
You could do your own thing and
so no one really noticed. But my boss, who's now our chairman of Ricca Terra, walked in, and as we were sort of doing our first training session, and the lady who did it for us, Lois, I can't remember Lois's last name, I said, the only thing I've got to pay you with is wine. So she said, we'll do it. And Murph walked in and he sat there, and I thought, oh God, how are we going to go here? And he said, Ashley, can you come with me? And he just said, whatever you're doing here, just keep doing it. I like the sound of it. So we changed the whole structure and the culture within the winery, focusing on positive things. So, when we have a meeting every morning, it wasn't about what went wrong, what went right. So again, approach to all this is, what have we got in our lives that's good? I always sit back and it's almost a self-discipline. I say, that's not right. But then I look at it and go, wow, look at all the stuff I have got. I haven't got 200 acres of Shiraz or Cabernet. I've got 200 acres of 42 different grape varieties that people want. I should not be complaining. So it's really
practicing that gratitude there.
What do you say to those people and say, well, that's just sort of, that's head in the sand sort of stuff. And if, a problem ignored, is a problem multiplied, don't you have to sometimes sort of confront
you do.
The elephants in the room?
But I think it's a mindset of it, and rather than sort of beating people up or finding out who's at fault, it's more along the lines of
So it's about resolution.
Yeah. So how do we fix this? And let's work out, let's look at all the good things we're doing. And so it's never about ignoring it. It's about how you address it. And I learned another skill many years ago. I used to break in horses in Texas, and the guy I worked with said, you never ever take your anger out on a horse. All the work you'll do in a day or a week or a month, you can undo in one moment, by getting stuck in the horse. So he always used to say, if you're frustrated, go out the back of the barn and kick that living shit out of a hay bale, get it out of your system, and then come back, and then keep going. And it's a mindset that I've always had. You can get angry and you can get a little bit uptight, but if you and managing people, and I've always been told, growing grapes is easy, making wine's a bit easier. Bottling becomes very difficult because I managed the Yalumba bottling and logistics for 2 years, my last job at Yalumba, and dealing with unions. Selling, it's the hardest, but the most hardest is managing people. And that's the skill, I think, that is something I feel that I'm reasonably good at it. And thank goodness over the years I've had a lot of training through the likes of Yalumba and Pernod, and then my other life experiences, realising that if you work with people properly and treat them well, you'll get a lot further in life with a lot less headaches.
So when it gets tough now, what is the equivalent of going and kicking the shit out of the hay bale? How do you find that?
Or is it a literal hay bale still?
Look, I get angry. The only time I really get tired, it would be in the internals of my car. I'll shout and scream and, swear and curse and carry on. But, the door comes open and it's a bit of a theatre. I know that, I've got to get rid of frustration somewhere, but it's not going to be in front of other people. And, look, probably my family sometimes cop the, grumpy old dad because no one's lit the fire when I've got home tonight, or the dishes are still out. But, you just, I think managing life and managing your business, you have to be supportive as best you can.
Will you talk to your family about why you're feeling frustrated at those times?
Yeah, because I don't like the fire. And all the lights are on the house. Dad, put another solar panel on. That's the solution.
The heater's blaring.
What about in regards to managing your staff? Are there signs you pick up on where perhaps someone's not doing so well or they could use some support? Like, how do you manage that differently to perhaps yourself?
Look, it's all about communicating. Now, I can't read between the lines very well and I've always said that, tell me if I'm being a dickhead. Just tell me if you aren't happy, because I can fix it. And a prime example happened the other day. One of our vineyard guys just broken up with his partner, and he just wanted a pay rise. He said, "Look, I need some extra money." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you came to see me, because I'd hate you just to leave for an extra $200 or $300 a month, when for me that's nothing. I mean, I don't want to lose you." And the fact that we sat down and talked about it, and I thanked him the fact that he was upfront with it, and he's a very good employee, and he's a really important part of our staff, and I don't want to lose you. And for the sake of a few $100, I mean, a case of wine a month, here you go. So yeah, I think it's just really good having good understanding and communication and empathy.
We've heard from a few guests already that the expectation is that the next couple of years are going to be particularly tough. Is that something you agree with, or what are you sort of expecting?
I think they'll be tough, but I think there's some amazing opportunities as well coming out of it. I mean, I think actually the industry needs a bit of self-reflection. I mean, actually, I wouldn't mind the industry to be a bit smaller. In the years I've seen in the past, there's always been sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe that light doesn't exist at the moment. But I think that it's adjustment that needs to happen in the industry. We can't keep going through the yins and the yangs of the wine industry, oversupply, undersupply. So I think I hope there's not too much interference. Unfortunately, is that industry, government trying to interfere with this too much, and it doesn't allow the flow to go where it should.
Where should it go?
Look, I think it's hard as it's going to be. There's people who are just going to have to pull out vineyards and get out of business.
Yeah.
And I always say this, the guy down the road here, he's got the corner deli. If he goes out of business, I'm not quite sure if there's a deli association or there's a group that lobbies to the government or whatever. He goes out of business.
Yeah.
And the ones that will survive is the deli owner that's doing something different, become boutique, or put some, something really.
He's got a better sausage.
He's got a better sausage and that sort of stuff. So. I think the opportunity is going to be that I've got a young son who's 19, just about head off to Mission Hill on Monday, and it's interesting to say that I get grumpy at home, but I'm quite upset my 19-year-old leaving home at the moment. It's actually been really hard process for me to, I'm getting older and they're growing up, so I'm not used to this. But I want him to come back because he's really interested in it. I want him to come back to an industry that he sees a future in as well, which he does.
He just wants to avoid the next couple of years, maybe.
He won't be, he'll be studying at uni. And as I said to him, our business was built on the downturn when everybody wanted to get out. And I'm just thinking, we're buying vineyards at such low prices, the infrastructure. What a great opportunity that was.
But does that also present, if there's this consolidation going to happen, is the right entities going to be the ones snapping up available vineyards? I mean, it's not every prospective buyer out there will be a Ricca Terra. There might be some sort of larger scale, commodity focused, vineyard acquisitions.
There could be, but going back to the Riverland, and I've had many people, William Downey and Patrick Sullivan and those alikes have taken them skiing.
All those scruffy Victorians.
Yeah, they were paying a fortune for their fruit, and land down there is just through the roof. And they go out skiing and they go, "This is amazing out here. This is just." And I say, "Well, this is this property I've bought, and how much?" I've got no problems telling them. I said, "Well, I paid that much for it," and their jaw just drops on the ground. And I said, "This is what frustrates me about this region in particular, the Riverland, is that what they should be doing is encouraging these up-and-coming winemakers, well, they're not up-and-coming, but these winemakers that have a business head and go, well, I can spend that in the Yarra, or I could spend that in the Riverland, and at the end of the day, if I grow the grapes in this particular fashion, my margin's this instead of this." And that's something that I think a lot of the opportunity in the future is actually attracting a new group of grape growers and winemakers to these regions, not just the old traditional model.
Yeah, so how important is it to get some of these people in on the ground and having a look at what's happening there? I mean, a lot of them would have maybe never been, or would certainly have an impression of what the Riverland is. How important is it to get them in there to see?
Oh, it's really important. That's why I've got a ski boat.
Yeah.
Hence, because the amount of people now that it was a tongue in cheek, that was our cellar door, and now it has, people come up and during vintage and they say, well, can we go out in the boat? It's not skiing, it's just having a beer. I was out with Xavier Goodridge the other day and he's sitting in the back having a beer and I'm just driving him around, and, we've done many deals just floating down the river. And again, that's a bit of a strategy for us. We have, before each Riverland Wine Show event, which is on the 21st next month, we invite our GLOs from our major wine companies just to get on the go skiing and drink beer and relax. And again, it's the strategy of, if you've got to get rid of two growers, which one are you going to get rid of first?
Not the one that takes you out skiing.
The ski boat. So you have to think a little bit more like that. But I think, we've got, there's also people who do promote the well. Unico Zello has done a great job, and we sell a lot of fruit to them. Bellwether, Silent Noise Wines, Kangarilla Road, Witches Falls, blah, blah, blah. I think we're getting close to 50 individual winemakers buying fruit from us. So they all go out and tell the story.
All of whom proudly sort of trumpet the association. They said, this came from Ricca Terra. We talked a little bit about, grower liaison officers, in a couple of other episodes as well. And, it's not the easiest job in the world, and sometimes the relationships between those people and growers can be a bit fractious. So what makes a good GLO?
Well, I started my life as a GLO. I think it comes back to exactly the stuff we're saying now, is that the best GLOs I've come across are the guys that listen and they tread that line well between what the grower wants and what the company demands.
Yeah.
And, the grower, I had a prime example of a new GLO that came into our region recently and was actually preaching to a grower that was sort of third generation about what he should be doing to machine prunes and vines. And the response from this guy was, and I said to him, I don't think you two are going to get along, because I knew both parties. And he said, you're right. I felt like bloody punching him in the nose. So you do need to have that respect. These guys, a lot of these growers really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of GLO work is actually your first step into the wine industry.
Yeah.
So I think my recommendations to any GLO is probably listen more than pitching out the advice.
Where should the research and development dollars be going, in your view?
Yeah, if we made you the big boss and gave you the checkbook, what would you be spending money on?
Look, first of all, I spend a lot of time in trade, and I still think, we do need to spend a lot of money on, especially at the moment, changing our image. how do we actually make Australian wine interesting again? And, we're definitely under a lot of pressure from anti-alcohol and all those type of things. So, we need to have, I think if I had a pot of money to spend on anything in the industry, it would be on getting our story correct. I'm a big supporter of this push on sustainability. I think if we get that right, we've got to get it right. It can't be it can't be smoke and mirrors. It has to actually be real.
Yeah,
and so
greenwashing doesn't really help anybody.
No, it doesn't. So it needs to be something that you can hang your hat on. And I think in the grape world, or as a grower point of view, it is sort of putting it into areas that can actually help with that sustainability. So more vines that don't need spraying as much. More electric tractors, all that sort of stuff. So then you can actually build on that sustainability. If we're going to be the best, country market in the world that produces sustainable grapes of wine, and the problem is our biggest thing is we've got this big area to take from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, so all of a sudden our competitors are shooting us at that negative point straight away, where if we're doing something in our backyards, we're saying, well, okay, yes, we realise there's some food miles there, but we're really saving down here. Yeah. So it's not an argument you can win on anymore. And then I'd go the other way, well, my biggest gripe at the moment is all this imported stuff coming in.
I was going to say, get the Champenois on board and say, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us.
And the problem with that, you go out in the market and you're competing, with these guys, some of these Italian wines that are landing at a 6-7 landed unit cost. And I can't compete with that because they're subsidised. So that's where also the buyer, the consumer needs to be, domestically needs to be taught that you buy local, and we're doing this in a sustainable manner. Well, don't go and buy something from the Northern Hemisphere, which has actually got all those food miles coming down.
When you say get the story right, what do you think the story is?
I was asked this question the other day, what excites me about the wine industry at the moment? And I like the diversity. I like that, I'm a big fan of, pet nats and skin contacts and the new packaging coming out. All that sort of stuff is, the more it's fractured and the more stories, the more I think that the more people that will touch. I think the days of just having Shiraz and Cabernet and Merlot and trying to make the very best, and we should never compete on being the best, because if you compete on being the best, you have competitors chasing you down, and eventually all you start doing is competing on price. So to me, having a real fractured approach in our wine industry, whether it be organics, biodynamics, alternative varieties, people farming in different ways, whatever it is, as long as it adds to the story of Australian wine, I think that should be it.
What do you think the potential is for the Riverland?
Oh, it's massive. Just got to get the headset right up there. And I'm a bit of a disruptor. Recently I was having a crack that you can't even buy Riverland wine in a local pub, and it got picked up by ABC, and then it got picked up by Anthony Madigan, and I was in the Qantas Club probably about a month ago, and I'm walking out, and those big TV screens, and it's got your flights, and it's got all these stories, and I looked up, and there's my name, and it said Riverland Winemaker. It says boycott local pubs. I thought, oh well, okay. It's
not quite what you said.
About one little thing, a rant I had on LinkedIn that had got all the way into a Qantas Club lounge and was playing. So
did anyone come back with a reasonable argument as to why you couldn't?
Oh look, there was a couple of supply and price. Supply is ridiculous. Price, look, we are competing. That area, the big clubs are. Buying from some big groups. So, we need to look at that. And if you're going to complain, you need to also look at, what the responses are. So we looked at a special pricing just for the Riverland. To be fair, a lot of the clubs and pubs have listened.
Yeah.
You've got Riverland Wine and now, also Destination Riverland who are working in collaboration to actually build that. It's the only region I know of in the world that you don't get local support for your wine. But it is changing. So sometimes you have to be a bit disruptive and make a bit of noise and have a bit of a temper tantrum, and then I'll kick the hay bale for people to say, okay, maybe we should consider this.
Do you think just one person being that disruptor and sort of leading the way that cuts through, and in your time, have you seen that actually have the impact that you want it to have where things do change, or are people too stubborn?
I think as an individual, I'm like I'm a bull at a gate. If I think it's unfair, I'm going to keep chasing it and be annoying until we start seeing some change. And I think if you look at the alternative variety, there were a number of individuals when we first started back in 2004, that just thought we were, publicly would actually say this is stupid, you should never do it. And I look back now and I go, well, those people are probably, they're still in the industry, they're still talking the same language. But, you know, if I look at what, you know, we've done and a couple of others, is that we're actually putting the Riverland on the map for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
So, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of about ignoring the crap that people say that won't happen, and you go, well, I'm just going to give it a crack. And I think the main thing about it is to truly believe it's the right thing to do. You know, we think it's the right thing for the Riverland. We think it's the right thing for the wine industry. We think it's the right thing for the environment. And I guess if you really believe in that and you're passionate about it, well, I think that's a strong enough force to push through, you know, any resistance you come up against.
Why does the Riverland mean this much to you? Because you can tell that it really does.
I had to ask myself that question myself, considering I'm from Anguston.
Yeah.
And I love the Barossa. I don't know. I just think that there needs to be more people in the wine industry that are just passionate about causes that are for the good. I think there's too much greed, and I think that's what frustrates me more than anything else. It's all about I went to an event recently, and there were some chefs talking about how really important it was to support local produce and paying the farmer and paying that. But reality is, they're all asking for discounts all the time, and that's what annoys me. So, I think sometimes you just need to keep pushing and be passionate about something and be true to yourself, and then sometimes call people out.
And is that, do you feel like a responsibility to maybe speak for those people who aren't as willing to jump up and make noise and rattle cages like you are? Not everyone is as comfortable, disrupting. But do you think?
You're correct. There are some people that just don't like conflict. I don't mind conflict, but, I don't want to create conflict. But sometimes if you have to create conflict to make change, well, so be it. I also want to sit back when I'm on my deathbed and look back and go, you know what, I actually have, it might sound a bit selfish, but I actually feel like I've made a change to the industry. Yeah. I've actually done something. I haven't sat back and just accepted what people are allowing to happen. I actually want to go, well, I did something, and hopefully my kids can continue that.
And you're seeing tangible benefits of that, throughout the Riverland. Other growers who might have a block full of Chardonnay and Semillon and Shiraz are coming to see what's growing at your place and tasting fruit and
not as much
seeing what's available.
Not as much as I would expect. But what I do like out of it, I'm finding varieties that were like, for example, Doradilla. I found a really old patch of Doradilla that actually Mac Forbes bought. There's more Doradilla went to the Yarra Valley than anywhere else in Australia this year. And people go, and Doradilla is actually a really good gauge of how old you are, because, if you probably
know what it is.
Yeah, that's right. What's this new alternative variety? Oh, it's fantastic. So there aren't as many people as you would expect, because I think a lot of people in the wine industry at the moment, I always say, when things are good, when Shiraz was in the Riverland at $700, $800 a tonne, people go, why am I bothering with all these alternative varieties or these climate adaptive varieties? I'm just getting in my tractor, I'm driving and I'm harvesting, I'm sending it off to the winery, I'm getting paid. Fantastic. But then what happens is it swings so quickly back. And that's what's happened. So instead of catching it at the bullseye, it's gone this far now, and now I can't afford to do it. I can't sell my Shiraz and Cabernet this year, so really can't afford to be putting in all these alternative varieties. And the other thing is that I'm really worried about is they put these varieties in, they farm them like their mass production Shiraz, and I say that's what's going to kill it.
Right, yeah.
I want people to be hand pruning like we do and thinking about quality and in the marketing and all that, get it right, not just go out and go.
You can't just change the flavour. You've actually got to change the whole mechanism,
and not compete on price. Ricca Terra is getting this. Oh, I can do that for half the price.
Yeah, but you're not going to make the same wine, are you?
No.
Is there enough work sort of being done at a nursery level? I mean, we know the Chalmers, are driving a lot of this, the Chalmers family, but is there, are there other opportunities?
The Chalmers are great. They've done a fantastic job. Yalumba do a really good job with their importation of the Antar Vinra clones. And then you've got the Riverland Vine Improvement, which are fantastic. So the problem is bringing a new clone or new variety into the country is almost a 10-year process.
Yeah.
You need to be thinking about that well in advance.
So, what are you thinking of now that, we're going to start rolling off our tongues in 10 years' time?
I quite like Grenache Blanc as a variety. It's already here. I mean...
Grenache Gris.
Grenache Gris.
Right.
Yep.
There's not much of that here.
No. I think we have to get to a point of actually taking some of these newer varieties that are already here, or newer varieties to Australia, and then start getting some volume of them. I mean, Fiano's a prime example. I mean, we're one of the largest growers of Fiano in the state, at least, and we still can't keep up with the demand. So, you know, it might be a good opportunity to put some more Fiano in. But again, as I said earlier, is, you know, here's a variety and here's how you should be growing it, and understand why you should be growing it in that fashion. And again, take the greed out. If you take the greed out of it, everybody makes a bit of money.
Brad Case wanted us to ask you when you're going to have a vineyard at Langhorne Creek.
I'm not going to have one at Langhorne Creek.
It's you know, we like new and shiny things, and then there's always, you know, people are going to get excited about new varieties and new experiences and new tastes and new flavours. Are we doing enough work with the varieties that we've always had to, you know, make them, you know, to evolve them, to make them maybe more able to withstand climate change or water issues?
It comes back to, it's interesting, I had this discussion with Max Allen many years ago about Sauvignon Blanc in the Riverland. And he said, you should never grow it there. And I guess to a certain degree, you shouldn't grow it there because of where it's come from. But I did say to him, I said, the thing about Sauvignon Blanc is actually quite good because Sauvignon Blanc breaks quite late. So, you know, your frost risks a little bit less. And the other thing that you pick it really early. So its window of growth is actually quite short compared to, say, Cabernet Sauvignon or even Shiraz. It's probably got one of the shortest growing periods, purely on the style of wine you're making. So I said, my counter argument was that some of these varieties do have a place in some of these warmer areas, but just don't expect to be making your New Zealand style Sauvignon Blanc. And I think the same thing applies to Chardonnay and Shiraz and, you know, and Cabernet. I mean, you get a bad year with Cabernet in say the Adelaide Hills, you're going to have something full of methoxypyrazines and grassy and that. So I think there's always ways you can improve, especially with clones, with the existing varieties, and they will come back. I mean, there's a hell of a lot more Shiraz, Chardonnay, Riesling and Cabernet drunk than the alternative varieties.
Yeah. Ash, we've got 3 questions that we're asking all our guests to end on. Who makes your favourite wine in SA other than you?
Oh, look, I'm a big fan of Quinn wines. So Andrew Quinn makes some good wines.
Good man.
He's a good man, yep. Pity he's an Essendon supporter. I'm a Collingwood supporter.
I'm a Carlton supporter.
I'll leave now.
I wish I knew that. What a game.
This interview's over. Red or white?
Quinny's started taking some stuff out of the Riverland.
Yeah, he does.
Too. He's seen the light.
Yeah, he does a bit. So we supply him his fruit, actually. So, no, he's good. A very good winemaker.
Red or white?
Red and black.
Red and white. What would I rather drink, red or white? Pink, rosé.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's an answer. We haven't had that one yet. And what makes South Australian wines unlike any other?
Well, I'm going to say it doesn't. I don't think South Australian wine is any different than any other wine. I think that's the thing that we have to actually start trying to establish. You know, what is about South Australia that's different than other areas around the world? So I don't really have an answer for that one.
What is it that you think is different about the industry compared to other?
I think the climate we've got, and I made this comment about a decade ago to Riverland Wine, is that the Riverland, but South Australia could be the largest organic wine growing region in the world. And I think we missed an opportunity. It hasn't gone, but our climate really does suit. You know, we're quite a dry, warm climate overall. So there's things that we could do in this region to have a place in the world market that would be very hard to replicate. So
what's it like? You go somewhere like, you know, the Barossa, where, you know, viticulture is the overwhelming sort of agricultural pursuit, whereas somewhere in the Riverland, you're part of a broader mix. I mean, how would pushing for saying we just want all organic viticulture go when you're having to deal with, you know, a citrus lobby or, you know, the various other productions coming out of the Riverland?
I think, you could still, we can do it in the Riverland. Actually, the Riverland's the largest wine growing region in the country by volume. You know, you look at Angoves in particular. So you're able to do it. I think it's an approach to say, well, you know, where is the largest organic wine growing region in the world? I actually don't know.
No, I don't know.
Is it something that's quite front of mind right now in the consumer? Most definitely. You know, people want to know what's been put in their food. If we approached this 10 years ago, you know, I think the story of what Australian wine, or particularly South Australian or Riverland wine would be quite defined, and I think would be in a really strong place in regards to competitiveness in the market. But we missed it because we were focused on, you know, the big end of town and just chasing big markets. But we've still got that opportunity.
You may be a better position than most people to talk about, you know, how you talk about the Riverland in markets that might, you know, international markets that, you know, wouldn't know the Riverland. How do you sort of sum it up in one or two pithy sentences to a sommelier in New York?
Well, the problem is people in Sydney don't even know where the Riverland is. You don't have to go as far as New York. I mean, you know, I think if you looked at the Riverland GI and I'll say that the baggage it carries, the baggage is really here in Adelaide to a lesser extent. The most baggage is in the Riverland. Like, how would I do that if I was in, say, Sydney and somebody said, "Where's the Riverland?" And I go, "Well, okay, you know, you could talk about the river and that." I said, "Do you know where the Barossa is?" And they go, "Oh yeah, I know the Barossa is." I said, "Well, we're the next suburb, we're the next wine growing region up the road." And their response is, "Gee, it must be good." And they try the wines at when they go, "It is good." So at the end of the day, the GI to me is probably not as important as the quality of the wine, but it's got to have that environmental, you know. And we do push our varieties as being using less water and that side of thing. So it's a hard question to answer because most people don't even know where the Riverland is. And and when you're out selling wine or trying to talk to a person about the region, you know, you've got about a minute to try and convince them where it is. And by the time you bring it up on Google Maps, time's over.
So just pour something and get it in their mouth first,
right.
and then
they go, "That's good." Yeah, doesn't matter where it comes from after that.
Yeah, exactly. It's always about what's in the bottle.
Yep. Then how much?
Yeah, well, there's that. I'm a wine writer. I don't ask those questions. Thanks for listening. Head to the Wine Grape Council of South Australia website for links and further resources. This is part of a bigger conversation, so feel free to share this podcast with your mates and look after yourselves. Cheers.